Hello everyone, and welcome back for the second part of my evacuation scenario from the Burma front. So picking up where we left our contending forces previously, a small group of British soldiers, the remnants of a failed assault on the Japanese fortifications around Donbaik, are attempting to withdraw back to their lines under cover of darkness, and a slightly larger group of Japanese, formerly the defenders, but now seizing an opportunity, are advancing after them in the hopes of bagging at least a minor prize from what's left of the forces that were assaulting their positions earlier in the day. So at the end of my last video, the situation was still fairly fluid. The Commonwealth troops had been fairly fleet of foot and had maintained a good separation distance from the Japanese, but not quite enough to enable them to break contact. The Japanese, for their part, are advancing fairly steadily, and while they're not yet in a position to cut off the fleeing Commonwealth troops, they're well on their way, but they do have to hurry, because if they dawdle too much or if they fall too far behind, they will let all these escaping troops out of the trap, and they don't want to do that. It will make for a very disappointing evening. So that is where we left things off. Excuse me. My apologies for the occasional marauding cat that sometimes appears. He often turns up as a random third player who is not always welcome, even though most of the time I am quite glad to see him. But if he does put in an appearance, I'll attempt to minimize his effect on this particular battlefield. So let's see how we get on. I'm picking up with the Commonwealth players' turn. So before I turn over their cards, I see they have a movement card present. Now, they have a bit of a difficult decision, because they can win this scenario by getting two of their wounded men, you can just about see the wound markers here, to a position that's relative range 0 to all of the Japanese forces. And as you can see, they're quite close to achieving that. Japanese groups A and B are at relative range 1 to them, and Japanese group C is at relative range 2. So there's a huge temptation just to keep withdrawing. But the problem is, and I touched on this in the previous video, if they pull back too far too fast, they'll give the Japanese too much open ground over which they can easily pursue them. The Japanese can win by getting 4 unpinned men into defensible terrain at relative range 5. Sorry, not relative range 5, I must stop doing that. Range chit 5. So the Commonwealth can't afford to pull back too soon, otherwise they'll basically give up an advantageous position to the Japanese. So what they can do is either take a risk and carry on falling back, and in effect run a race, hope that they get far back enough before the Japanese can pursue them, or they can hold their position for now at range chit 0 for all of them, and maybe win by denying the Japanese a chance to reach range chit 5. If necessary, they can advance 1, but then that puts them at risk of destruction. And as I'd mentioned at the end of the previous video, the Japanese squad is in much better shape than they are. The final option is to go for a bit of a compromise, maybe leave their strongest group, their command and fire support group, behind as a holding force, while trying to get the remnants of groups A and C far back enough to avoid the Japanese. Now, this may work, but what it does do is it puts Group B in danger of being encircled by the advancing Japanese forces. And again, it becomes a bit of a race. Can they get those 2 wounded men to safety in time? And at what cost? So they have a really, really difficult decision to make. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely sure what the answer is, because it's a very tough call. So I think, given that they have a movement card and it's fairly early in the game, I will take a risk on it. I think the compromise move is possibly the best. So the weakest Commonwealth group, Group A, is going to begin falling back, and they're now at range chit -1 or -1. So they are now at relative range 0 to Japanese groups A and B, and only at relative range 1 to group C. And of course, for the purposes of firing at night, Japanese group C is so far removed from them, they might as well not be there. So it's a good start for the Commonwealth. The other two groups will do nothing for now. And turning over the rest of the Commonwealth cards, they have a wire card. That may come in useful on their next turn. Now, as for the Japanese, they really need to get moving. They have a weak fire card, but using that at night at this distance is probably not going to be very helpful, especially as all the Commonwealth groups are in pretty good defensible terrain. For those of you who might not have caught the previous video, I'm suspending the jungle rules for this scenario, but buildings are representing rugged ridge lines or natural features that confer a high defensive bonus, just to reflect the nature of the terrain outside Donbaik in very late 1942, very early 1943. So the Japanese may want to hang on to that for now, but they do have movement options. Now, seeing the Commonwealth starting to get away over there, I'm going to take a chance on this being the right thing and order effectively my scouting recon group to pursue them and not let them get too far away. It's not worth taking a shot yet, I think, so I will just draw a card. The other two will do nothing. Back to the Commonwealth. So with the cards they have, that may have been the right call after all. Their Group C is going to begin pulling back as well. So after some reflection and partly dictated by the cards that they appeared to be having, I think the best thing the Commonwealth can do is opt for the compromise. Group B buys time while Groups A and C do a run. So they're well on their way. And they have no other cards they can play this turn, so they'll just draw top up, which I won't look at till next turn, as per the solitaire rules. Oh dear, that's a terrible card. Okay. I think just to keep things moving, I'll have my Group A brush up against that wall there, because I don't really want my troops scampering out too exposed, even though it's a night scenario. Unfortunately for the Japanese, that wasn't a movement card, so I can't exercise my discard rights. They'll do nothing this turn, and I'll just draw and see what happens. Okay. The Commonwealth player has turned up yet another movement card. I think for this tactic of theirs to work, they're going to have to take a risk. So Group B is going to continue holding its position. Group A is going to take itself right out of the tree line it's been hiding in and play another retrograde movement card on top of the one that they had before. So they're really running for it this time. There's no holding back now. They've committed to the plan and they're going to go for it. And that's actually rather bad news, because they are now at relative range 0 to all my groups. So the Commonwealth is actually on the cusp of winning this just by getting men to safety. If they can whack some terrain on that, then they are well on their way to winning. So I'll draw a card for them. I'm just going to quickly look at the scenario conditions to see whether it has to be defensible terrain the Commonwealth has to run into. Yes, he does have to get them into terrain that will give them cover. So it's not quite over yet, but for me as the Japanese player, it's scarily close. They are really legging it over there. And I've been caught out with really quite hopeless cards. So I'm going to discard those two and hope that I can get some mobility. Aha, good timing. Back to the Commonwealth. They're not going to play any cards on me on themselves, I should say, this turn, because turning them over, they don't have any cards that can help them, but they do have cards that can hurt me, and you'll see what I mean in a second. They're going to discard the Marsh card. I'm very grateful that I'm not moving, because otherwise that could have been a pain. They're also going to discard the Wire card, and predictably it's going to be discarded on my most potent infantry group. Drat. So they draw another 2 cards. Again, I won't see those till next turn. Okay. Well, that's I have a tough decision now. I really wanted to get my Group B moving up to get some firepower going, and I need to decide whether to take a risk at this moment. Do I spend that card getting rid of the Wire card, preparatory to bringing them up? Because, of course, this being a night scenario, they're really not doing much good back there at all. Or do I just throw caution to the winds and fling my Group A or my Group C forward in an attempt to stop them? I think I'm not going to give in to panic just yet, so I'm going to play this a little bit cautiously, and I'm going to get rid of the Wire card. I may regret this, but I'm not going to lose my head just yet. And I'll draw a card and see what... okay, not that useful. So what options do the Commonwealth player have? Oh no, well, bad news for me. Breathing hard and panting like a bunch of marathon runners, their Group A charges over the first steep, muddy ridge they can find and flings themselves gratefully down behind it. So now I can start panicking. They are halfway to winning the scenario. And just to make sure nothing can possibly go wrong, they're also going to chuck their Group C into slightly lesser cover. Right, that has changed everything. They're not going to do anything else. They're just going to draw for the end of their turn. But I'm going to have to stop being cautious now, because if I don't do something, if the scenario permits me to do something, then I will suffer the indignity of losing the game on the first deck, in the middle of the first deck, without achieving anything significant by way of picking off enemy soldiers, and that would be awful. At this distance, that fire card is really not going to avail me much, and neither is that rally card, so I'm going to take a chance on ditching both of them and praying to the Emperor, who was favouring me earlier, that... okay, my prayers have gone unanswered. That may help if their Group C moves again, but I don't think it's really going to be of much use. So What is the Commonwealth going to do? Now, looking their cards over, I've just turned over the latest batch, and they have that, which is very powerful. It's about time I see what their middle group's capable of, because they're at relative range 2 to my Group A and my Group C. They're not powerful enough to use that card. So what they may do... This is taking a bit of a huge risk on their part. They have a large rally card, which makes it just about tempting to throw that away in hopes of getting more movement cards. So they're going to do that. And I'm going to cry in frustration and throw those two out onto the discard pile. No! Oh, no, this is not what we want at all. So looking over the Commonwealth cards for their turn, they do not have any movement cards, thank the Emperor, because otherwise I'd be really sweating buckets now. However, they do have a potentially disruptive firing card, which they're probably tempted to start using on me. Let's see, their Group B at relative range 2. It generates 5.5 firepower, which normally would not be enough to use that card, but being British, they benefit from the marksmanship rule. So they could use it if they spot me, and they are going to attempt to spot my Group C, which they do not do. Okay. So no further actions for the Commonwealth. For my part, well, this is not looking good. I'm not close enough to use that card, and I have no movement options. So again, I'm going to take an enormous risk. Chuck out these two. And just pray I get some movement cards. Hurrah! Absolutely vital that I get close to them and stop them wriggling away from me. The Commonwealth is going to try and repeat its spotting. Or are they? Are they? A lot might depend. The only thing they can do is attempt to shoot at me, or they could discard in the hopes of getting a movement card and possibly ending the game very, very soon. But it's a difficult decision. I wonder, given that their spotting attempt failed last turn, they might take the chance on a discard yielding a movement card. So I'm on absolute tenterhooks. I've placed 2 cards face down in the area where the Commonwealth hand is, sort of off the game board, that side. And I'm trying to stare through the card back to see what's on them, but that's not going to help me very much. So in some desperation, I am going to chuck forward. I need a group with good firepower, so I'm going to chuck forward my Group C as they're closer. And they're going to try and catch up with those Commonwealth units. See, that saved me a bit, because even though their chances of hitting that lot are fairly minimal, they've at least moved closer so they can't break contact. So, and if nothing goes wrong, we have got the brush card to play on them. So it's looking a bit better than it did a few minutes ago, and I've got more movement options now. Meanwhile, the Commonwealth player turns his cards over and discovers to his great disappointment that there are no movement cards there. Oh dear. But he does now have a prime target rushing towards him in the shape of those 5 men over there, and the relative range is now 3 from his fire support group. So he generates 9 firepower factors, even accounting for the wounded man there. So let's see if he spots us. He does not, remarkably. Okay, good for us. And that ends his turn because he can do nothing else. So what's going to happen is my group C are going to bundle gratefully into some more long grass over there. And I really need to get some heavier support forward, so I'm going to use my other movement card to get my command and fire control group moving too. Because we really want to catch these British before they get away. And that wasn't too bad. Oh great, cower cards. Oh well, a cower card and a movement card, so mix of disappointment and something good. The British are a bit disappointed at the start of their turn because, of course, previously I would have made a better target while my Group C was moving, but beggars can't be choosers. Given that we're closing in again, they may risk another discard. So they're going to throw away this ludicrously high firing card and this slightly suboptimal concealment card, and cross their fingers for the next turn. In the meantime, I'm going to keep the pressure on their Group A by moving my Group A forward. Don't want to make them feel that they're in any way secure. And plus, we're now in real danger of securing our victory objectives if they don't do something about it. So, and also, we may soon achieve natural flanking on their Group B. I think in the interests of speed over safety, my Group B is just going to benefit from that cower card, open ground. And my Group C will attempt to shoot at their Group B. It's probably a bit of a wasted shot, but we may as well start trying to weaken them. And we spot them, although another building gets chucked out for having been used as a random number check. So firepower of 3 rounded down to 1. -1 because of the cover they're in. They have no concealment cards, so I may be lucky yet. Let's see what happens. Sergeant Vasey is fine. Corporal Barnard is fine. Private Scarborough's all right. And Private Hodge is okay. So no worries. All we've done is illuminate ourselves for the British, but I imagine that can be quite demoralizing too. They can see that we're coming for them. Oh, okay. Looks like my good fortune's been balanced out by something a bit awful now. So back to the British. I think it's getting to the stage where they may have to change tactics. They haven't seen a movement card for quite a while now, at least a few turns. I mean, they had that initial sprint that nearly got them away from me, but that seems to have been spent by now. And they are going to have to face the fact that if they can't break away from me, they can't let their squad get too spread out on the wings. So they may have to stand and make a fight of it. So with that in mind, let's have a look at some of their options. That weak group's at relative range 1, so they're not going to be chucking out much serious firepower. They're at relative range 2, so much the same problem. Their Group B is the one that's really well positioned to hurt us. And relative range to that group still yields them a firepower of 9, which means if they spot us, they could play that card on us. And they'll have an advantage spotting us because we fired at them last turn. So they're going to go for it. And they spot us. So I'll just hand them that token. So they open fire. It's halved to 2, reduced to 1 because we're in brush. I'm not going to take any chances. I'm going to reduce it to -1 for our concealment. So Private Togami is still pinned. Oh, that's unlucky. Private Sakai is all right. Private Kurata is fine. Private Yumani is okay. And Private Fusano is all right. Okay, that could have been a lot worse, but the bad news for me is that a significant portion of the deck has now been burnt through, which I think is what the British wanted anyway. So they draw their card to replace that. Difficult. That is so useless, but I don't want to leave Private Togami flapping in the wind, so I'm going to slightly waste that rally card just to get him back on his feet. And I hope that... Oh no, really? Really? Thought we're supposed to be the aggressive side. Okay, back to the Commonwealth. They still have firing options, which is a rather scary thought. And they are going to... The only card they can play at the moment, by way of a firing card, is that one, and it's fairly weak. But they could either have a massive firing blowout at my group there in the hope of pinning some of us again, or they could switch fire and target my somewhat more vulnerable Group A. Now, given that it's in the interest of the British player to waste time on this one, it makes more sense for them to target my Group C. So they're going to go for that. And they do spot us. Must say the British night vision is better than I gave it credit for. So rounded down to 1. 0 because we're in the brush. And as ever, I'm being cautious and making it -1. So, sorry Togami, you only just recovered. You're under fire again. So nothing happens to you this time. Ooh, Sakai is pinned. Looks like they're taking turns.
And people need to sponsor you. So
Kurata is fine.
And I was wondering if you and Grandad could sponsor
Yumani is fine. And Fusano is fine, so I think we're doing okay. Sorry all, we have cross-battlefield communications going on. No worries, sweetheart. I'll stop tapping into your radio net. Sorry about that, everybody. My bad on comms.
For each lap, £3.
So, okay, the British have finished their fire that round. And I will draw a card for the Commonwealth side. Now, unfortunately, come my turn, there's not a lot I can do. I will just be wasting cards if I try and open fire on the British with that one. So much to my frustration, I'm just going to play the rally card to get Sakai back. And I will draw 2 just to fill my hand out. That's not looking all that much better, unfortunately.
Dad's doing a video.
So looking back on the Commonwealth side, they still have no movement options, so it's becoming a bit of a worry for them. If I can carry on sweeping forward and get enough men of my men to range chit 5 and get them properly entrenched or just into good terrain, then I can win the game. So the race, foot race that this is turning into, is now swinging in my favour. And there's not a lot the Commonwealth can do about it. So for this turn, they're just going to be slightly relieved that the fired last turn marker disappears from their Group B. But they're also going to discard those 2 cards, which in these circumstances are really of no use to them, and draw 2 replacements. So swinging back to me. This is not really looking good for me either. The only good news is that I will get my Group A into some kind of cover. But I am crying out for movement cards as well, and they're simply not coming at the moment. What about the Commonwealth? I'm nervously turning those cards over now. No movement cards, but I think we're going to be violently abused again with bullets. And they do have options, so their groups A and C are still fairly impotent because they don't have enough firepower and they're a bit too distant. But if they succeed in a spotting, their Group B will be able to chuck another load of lead at my Group C. So let's see what happens. And they see us. Okay. So firepower of 4, rounded down to 2, down to 1 because of the brush. Much to my regret, I have no concealment cards now, so here comes the pain. Private Tagami is pinned. Good shot on the part of the Commonwealth guys. Sakai is all right. Kurata is okay. Yumani is okay. And Fusano is all right. Okay, that could have gone a lot worse, but they've pinned a man again. The pendulum of fortune seems to be swinging from one side to the other. And what can I do about this? Part of me really wants to return fire, if only out of sheer frustration, but I don't know how much good it will do. I've got that card that I would really like to use, but at this range, I'm unable to use it. So I'm just going to have to... I really want that group to retain its mobility. So I am going to play this rally card on Private Tagami. I will probably regret it if the firing continues. But I need to get Tagami back in action just so his group can move. I realise this is very suboptimal play, but I don't want to give the British a chance to get away. And patience is rewarded. I will use that next turn. The Brits lose their fired last turn counter at the start of their turn. And I'm afraid they are in a position to shoot at me again. And they're going to inflict the usual trauma. Group B is going to try and pick out Group C again. And they see me. Of course they do. They've been spotting me consistently the whole evening. So, end result is a firepower of 1. Still have no concealment. Tagami, you're up again. And you're pinned. Permission to cry now. Right, what about you, Sakai? You're all right. Kurata, you're okay. Yumani is also pinned. Oh dear, this is not looking good. And Private Fusano is okay. So the British get that this now well-worn marker back for having riddled me with bullets again. But you know what? It doesn't seem to have harmed their cause in the slightest. The other disturbing development from my perspective is that with the very last random number check drawn for that sequence of firing, deck 1 has now come to an end. So we are 1/3 of the way into the game now in terms of the timing. And I'm very interested to see where we go from here. At least with the reshuffle, a lot of movement options are going to come back, but I'm conscious that that cuts both ways. So give me a mo while I just reshuffle this lot. Okay. So we'll just draw a card for the Commonwealth forces. And let's start the Japanese turn. This is a complete mess. That was a terrible disappointment. Well, I have no rally cards, so I think there's no choice about this. We're just going to have to get my main group moving up. Otherwise, we could face a little bit of a catastrophe. And I'll just draw a card. Ooh, maybe you should start earning your pay tonight, my friend. Turning over their card, much to my relief, the Commonwealth player has a gully, but no movement cards that can get him anywhere near it. So, looking at his options, it's going to be a long time before he's in a position to use that. And to be honest, he doesn't want to let me that close anyway, so he feels a bit safe about discarding that. He'll also get rid of that because he's got another better one. And he'll just hope he gets better replacements the next time. So, what now? I'm going to use my discard option because that card is plainly hopeless in a knight scenario. And it also gives me a chance to turn my sniper on that really annoying Group B over there. So locking and loading, he is aiming at Sergeant Vasey. Okay, let's hope he makes the shot. And he fails miserably. That was really not good. And that's really not useful. That is. But what are the British going to do when it's their turn again? They don't have useful cards this turn, and it may be a waste to do this, but they're sitting on some good rally cards, and it's tempting for them to just try and take my sniper out. So again, as they tried to previously, out of sheer vindictiveness, and especially as he drew such a low random number check, they're going to see if they do it. And let me just check whether colour has a... Ah, he is lucky. If that had been a black random number check, my sniper would have bought it. As it is, he gets away with it. So, bit of a disappointment for the British, but not too great a one. I'm just going to rally those two for now. I can't really get this bunch firing until they stop moving. Well, I mean, I could get them to fire, but it would be a massive, great waste. Okay, useful investment for the future, especially after what the Brits have been putting us through. Okay, back to the British. Unfortunately for them, they can't really get away with being frivolous anymore. They need to get back into it. So they had fun with the sniper, but it's time for them to do more discarding because they need options. So they're going to get themselves some options. What am I going to do? None of this is really great. I'm going to chuck out the weakest and the downright excessive because I can't see myself being able to use those. Let me just have a think about my group 3. No, we don't have enough firepower. We're just one too low to use that one. Oh, to have access to British marksmanship. How are the British faring in the meantime? Ah, okay, the British have finally turned up a movement card. And the temptation for them is to maybe restart the race a little. They could start that lot running again and gain a load of they could put all my guys back to relative range 0 to their group A. But if they want to go for the option of trying to win by getting 2 wounded men to safety, they can't ignore group C. And the question is, how lucky are they going to be in terms of me storming my way to range chit 5? We're only part way through deck 2 at the moment, so there's a fair bit of time for me to do that. It's a tough one. Maybe they can get away with trying it. I think luck may be on their side. It's a bit 50-50, so they're going to do it. Their group at Group C is going to pull back just a little bit more. I'll just find a range chit for them. So they are leaving us behind. I got to admit, their Group B has been doing a superb job of trying to keep, at the very least, my Group C at bay. So this may yet work out for them. Back to me. Unluckily for them... Oh, rats, I have a horrible choice. I either get my Group B into unsatisfying but usable terrain, or I block their Group C with one of the Chongs, or Burmese streams, that is, and halt them where they are. I think, given how much trouble this will cause, I'm going to go for a straight discard. I'm going to discard the Cower card because I don't like it anyway. And I will ditch this stream on them. So that has suddenly turned into a very bad idea for the retreating Commonwealth troops. And even better, I now have some firing cards. Now they're a bit stuck on this turn. I'm just turning over their face down cards, which they drew at the end of last turn. They have no movement cards, they have no firing cards, so they are in a bit of a pickle. I think in terms of what they need, they're going to take a chance and throw out those, because they need movement and they need terrain, or they need firing cards. The key sets that they're really after are those 3. Meanwhile, can I actually shoot anybody? Yes, I can. It's going to be a long shot. But my Group C can attempt to gain some measure of revenge on their Group B. But then is it worth it? Because they're really well concealed behind that terrain there. They have a good position, and it's all their highest morale value men, so I might just be burning through the deck to no purpose. I think reluctantly, I'm going to discard those 2 rather than use them. Again, this may be poor play on my part, but I've 2 thoughts in mind. Get enough of my guys to range chit 5, And if I can get that close and I'm thwarted before I get to range chit 5, then at least I'll be close enough to use this bad boy here. And hopefully that will be enough to swing things permanently in my direction. Let's see. So as for the Commonwealth, they're going to turn over their cards. Ooh, they have a firing card. So Group B is going to try and get up to its old tricks again and spot Group C. And they do, having had lots of practice and become really adept at it by now, the annoying whatnots. So in this case, it's down to 0 after all the modifiers, but I have no concealment card, so it's a bit 50-50. Private Togami, you're fine. Private Sakai, you are fine. Private Kurata is okay. Private Yumani is all right. That goes away. And Private Fusano, you are okay. All right, so they lit us up to no good purpose there. And incidentally lit themselves up, but no matter. So I don't really need any of these. I think I'm going to do 2 more discards this turn. Let's see if I can get my sniper to do a proper job on their Group B this time round. Ah, he's aiming at Private Hodge. Not quite as high value as the Sergeant, but never mind, I'll take it. Ooh, and he's killed him. Well done, Sniper. We have our first casualty of the night. Ah, well, I'm glad somebody seems to know what he's doing on our side. And I do include myself in that observation, to be fair. So I am very satisfied with that. So I will happily draw my cards, even if most of the British get away. We'll know we got one of them. And most significantly, given the amount of trouble Group B has been giving us, we've reduced their firepower, not by a great amount, but it can be quite tight with British squads, and every man lost really does hurt them. So, Commonwealth boys don't have many good options. I've just turned their cards over and it's really not looking great. They're not going to bother trying to take out my sniper. That was such an excellent random number check that their chances of doing anything useful to him are pretty low, so they're going to let that one go. More usefully, they might discard. So they're going to lose the concealment and the rally card. They have another rally card and a hero card, so they're not really going to miss that. But those 3 other types of cards that I mentioned previously, that's what they really want right now. Back to me, I still have tons of cards that I can't really dream of using at the moment. I wonder what to do. They're still on the move. I think I'm coming to the painful conclusion I'm just going to have to risk more discarding to get what I want. Aha! And what I want is finally coming. Question is, what is the Commonwealth going to do this turn? I don't think the answer is a great deal. They have a ludicrously high firing card, which they ought to just do themselves a favour and get rid of. And they may get rid of the woods card because they've got a buildings come ridge card in hand. So I'm going to chuck those 2 out. And they're just going to hope that they get better luck next turn, because meanwhile I am closing in. So my Group B has finally made it to the cover of either a bank or a wall. And I am going to get Group 3 moving again, because they're in the best position to fulfill my my range chit 5 requirement for winning. Ooh, no, we're not there yet. Don't get too ambitious, Andrew. Range chit 4. But we are nearly there, and now the Commonwealth player really needs to start panicking, because I will soon be in a position to claim a win on that one. In fact, what are they going to do? Ah, okay. The group directly opposite me, which has been badly caught out by the stream, is going to begin fording it, because they realise there's a gap that needs to be plugged there fairly urgently. And similarly, because there's no chance of me being held back now unless they get something really nasty, they're thinking they might try and close their line up now. So what they are going to do is... Actually, do they want to do that? No, they're going to hold on to that card because it's not a problem on that side of the battlefield for them. The real crisis for the Commonwealth, and I suppose in some ways for me, is playing out here on the right. So they're just going to draw a card. As for me, now I'm at relative range 3. That's 15 firepower. I'm going to have a crack at reducing their Group B with my Group B. And we do spot them. So firepower of 0 after all modifiers are accounted for. They have no concealment cards. Sergeant Vasey is fine. Corporal Barnard is fine. Private Scarborough's fine. Well, I wasn't expecting miracles, but at least we've let them know we're here now. And I'll draw a card. Ah, just what I need. Maybe I should be reckless about this. Throw in a banzai charge or something classy like that. Unfortunately for me, Commonwealth Group C is now going to advance. So they've left the stream behind and they are dangerously exposed, but they are beginning to push back towards me. I'll just find a range chit for these boys. Question is, will they make it in time to block me? I don't think they will. Or at least I'd prefer it if they didn't, but it's not over yet, because their Group B is sighting in on me. And of course they have spotted us. I'm no longer surprised by this. Now, because we're moving, the final value is 1, but I'm taking no chances, so I'm making it -2. So Tagami is okay. Sakai is fine. Kurata's fine. Yumani is fine. And Fusano is fine. Yep, we advance heedless through the hail of British fire. Just give them a fired last turn token. And all they can do is draw for the end of their turn now. Did I mention last turn that I was feeling a bit reckless? Well, I still am. So in my eagerness to secure victory and risk everything, I'm going to tell Group C to speed up. So we leave the cover of the brush far behind and we're charging heedlessly through the darkness now, anxious to reach a position from which we can cut the British off. And I pray, in fact, because we played a movement card, I'm going to use my right to get a discard in. I want to keep that just in case. And I will draw and pray that we get some terrain. No! I want defensible terrain. I need to win the scenario. Commonwealth have just turned over their cards, and they have some fairly impressive options. The first thing that's going to happen is that their Group C is going to occupy a fairly strong bit of terrain in preparation for making some sort of last stand. And in the meantime, oh yes, we've just achieved mutual natural flanking fire upon each other, which is not very helpful for either of us. I will just find myself some markers. So that's not very good at all. Could make things very dramatic shortly. So, what happens now? Sorry, I lost my thread while I was getting the counters. Oh wait, actually, let me just very rapidly check a rule there, because I'm not entirely sure we have triggered natural flanking fire on each other. It's all very embarrassing. I made a video about this a couple of days ago. I really ought to have watched it first. Give me a second, everybody. No, we have not. How very embarrassing, because I haven't actually advanced beyond relative range 5. So that is actually a huge relief. So I drew my cards. I was very disappointed. And I think they were about to shoot back at me if they could. We just wanted to check how much firepower they had. They don't have quite enough, except just to use that card. And they need to spot me, which they do. So here comes the fire. So all things being equal, nighttime. Oh dear, it's at full strength because we're moving so openly. This could hurt. Private Tagami is okay. Private Sakai is okay. No, they're not. Zeros, they're pinned. What am I saying? No, this can't be happening. So near and yet so far. Private Karata is pinned as well. Private Yumani is definitely pinned at that. And Private Fusano is not pinned, amazingly. Oh well, well done, Fusano. You're just about the only one. And at that, the Commonwealth will breathe a sigh of relief because they've bought themselves a bit of time there and draw their cards. For my part, I'm going to count my lucky stars that I have that rally card. I'm going to play it just to wake all these men up. And I am going to hope to heaven that I get a terrain card. Now, I'm sorry, everyone. I've just looked at the time and I've realized that I've run out of time in a real world sense before I have to bring this to a close. So I'm going to end this by revealing the cliffhanger of whether the Japanese would have got a terrain card that they could bundle Group C into. And they have not. So hypothetically, the scenario would have gone on, and I think it would have come down to a struggle over whether I could get 4 unpinned men into defensible terrain there or whether the Commonwealth could have stopped me. It's night time, a lot could happen, a lot of strange and fluky stuff does happen at night, and I think at this stage of the proceedings it could have gone either way. But I hope that, while I'm sorry that I haven't been able to finish this scenario properly, I hope that's given you a flavour for why I like it so much. I mean, Upfront tells magnificent stories pretty much every single time, but I feel that this scenario is one of those that tells it not necessarily a better story, but a rather different story. And it tells a really good one. It's tense. Both players have something different to worry about. There's a lot of decision making to be made. Do you run it as a giant race? Do you go for crushing the other squad? Do you want firepower or close combat to trump maneuver? You have a lot of choices for how you play it. And then, of course, there's the eternal unpredictability of Upfront to fuel that excitement and that sense of nervous tension as the scenario goes on. So I suppose, although, again, sorry not to finish it, but I hope that you've had as exciting a ride with this one as I have. As always, my usual thank yous to all of you who've tuned in to watch this. A big hello to all of my regulars. As I always say, and I really do mean it, I appreciate your company, guys. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure and a privilege. To anyone who's visiting my channel for the first time, a very warm welcome to you. Hope you've enjoyed this video, if it's your first one. If Upfront has brought you here, then please check out my other Upfront videos. And if it's wargaming in general, awesome hobby that it is, please have a meander through my channel. I hope you find other things that you like.